Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Vet Chats, where we help veterans share their awesome stories and make the veteran community a better place. Stay tuned to hear how the new generation is continuing their service. Also, Vet Chats is now available on Race Across America Radio. We will be played Mondays at 9 p.m. and Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. They have a ton of great veteran content that I know you'll appreciate. You can find them at raceacrossamerica.org, iHeart, or the Odyssey app. Hello, everyone. I hope you all had a great weekend. It was just too unbelievably hot to be outside, except for today. It was really nice. I got to go for a nice walk outside. But anyhow, I see our guest has joined us. We are inviting Matt Stack, a Marine Corps veteran, on to share his story with us. Hey, everyone. All right. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How was your weekend?
It was eventful. I think dealing with the heat here too, and then broken water heaters this morning, and kids screaming, and trips to Lowe's. I mean, just living on the edge, Like
Exactly what you do want to do on Sunday, right? And how many kids do you have?
I've got four kids, and then we ended up with a whole bunch of pets. So four kids, two dogs, a cat, seven chickens. We just can't stop. Someone needs to intervene.
Right, right. Have you heard of the whole chicken math thing where
Yes.
like yeah, is that what happened or how did you end up with seven?
It's like, even though I didn't get any, I equate it to like the tattoos of homesteading. You think, oh, we'll just get one chicken and it'll be great. Next thing you know, you just can't stop. And so
Right? They look lonely or oh we would be perfect if we could get three eggs a day, so let's get two more, like that sort of
best.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. Well, that's good. I'm so glad to have you on. So let's get into
Same.
your story. So
Yeah.
how did you end up getting in the military? What was enticing about the military that had you join?
Yeah. So I wish it was a much cooler story. I was working at Blockbuster Video, and at that time I was rocking my Doc Martens and my puka shell necklace and smoking weed and partying. And I just knew, well, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. My parents said, well, you need to start saving that money from Blockbuster to go to college. And I thought, no, I'm just going to join the military and travel around the world. And I can remember, oh, I see Matt Piles. What's up, buddy? Love you, man. And so I can remember the recruiter running out there yelling, hey there, hard charger, and taking me in.
Right.
And within 5 minutes of talking to him, I wanted to be a Marine. And I was sold. My sister is a little bit older than me. She had joined the Army and absolutely crushed it. She did amazing. So I kind of had a lot of pressure going in. I knew I didn't want to go Army. I initially wanted to go into EOD and deal with explosives to talk to the Marine Corps, and I was set. So I thought, all right, I'll enjoy my last summer as high school grad and take off, and then the rest is history.
Wow, they get you, those recruiters. They know exactly what to say, dude.
Oh man,
Especially like how you described yourself as a teenager. They're like, I'm getting another one today as soon as you
he
walked
saw me
in.
a mile away. My corduroy shorts. Yeah, he saw me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so what was your experience like in for you?
Of joining once I got in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was probably the rudest awakening I've had. I hadn't, I grew up in a divorced house, but great family overall, and I didn't really have, I guess, a ton of preparation going in. I can remember reading something one time before going in that talked about how everyone in the Marine Corps, when they go through boot camp, talks in third person. So you can't refer to yourself as an I or a me. You have to talk to your third person. And I can clearly remember going up to my recruiter, telling him, going, hey, I read this thing where you have to talk in third person the whole time. And I remember he goes, oh yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what that's about. And he just dodged it. So it's this horrible
What a
thing of
jerk.
trying to figure out how to talk in third person, let alone just getting yelled at 24/7. It was my first, I tell everyone, it was like my first real introduction to a complete life of chaos, 24/7. And you learn to thrive in it. You learn to welcome it. You learn how to adjust. And the way the boot camp in the Marine Corps, I mean, even the military, is designed is phenomenal. It really breaks people down and builds them back up. But I wouldn't say I loved it, but it was definitely the start of an awesome journey. I wouldn't change anything, but golly, as a young punk kid going in, I just remember I'm hoping they don't single me out for something. I'm gonna try to blend in and not come out.
Yes. Stay under the radar. I remember I wanted to stick out and be like a leader, and then I realized it's not worth it to stick your neck out like that. Just focus on graduating. You can do all that afterwards. Boot camp's
Right?
not the place for that.
Yes.
Yeah, so where was your first duty station?
Yeah, so after Paris Island and then going to all your schools, so A school, C school, I ended up, when I went to the recruiter, I told him I wanted to be EOD. And at that time, Hurt Locker hadn't come out, but I remember just wanted to be involved with explosives and everything. He said, well, you got to go aviation ordnance to go into EOD. So I said, okay, put me down for that. And he goes, I remember he said, and when you get to your school, just tell him you want to go EOD. And I thought, okay, great. So I can remember getting to my school and going like, hey, I wanted to go EOD.
Yeah.
They're like, awesome. When you re-enlist, put it down. And my eyes just, when I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do this. And I ended up loving it. I loved aviation ordnance. It was a really tight-knit community. And my first duty station ended up being overseas in Iwakuni, Japan, which is about 45 minutes south of Hiroshima. And so we went there and tried to, you know, when you're young, you try to like go as far away from base as possible to try to experience the culture. And I loved it. I ended up staying out there 2 years out of my 4-year enlistment. And I look back and some of my fondest memories of serving were in Japan. And everything that happened from there. It's a beautiful place. And there's so many things you can mention. The Eagle's Nest, we would go, and, you know, Mongolian barbecue and the parties and the drinking and the partying, and then everything else that came with it. Just shortly after I was in Japan, 9/11 hit. We were overseas in Japan, and then everything changed after that. Lots of deployments, lots of prep. But I still look back, it was an awesome time.
Yeah, it's like you got to experience that fun, and then all of a sudden, you know, shit hits the fan. It's like it's game time.
Yes.
What was the you know, mutual reaction? Were people like, okay, we got to band together, or was everyone like, I hope I don't have to go? What was that
Say that again. I'm sorry. I was reading Red, White, and Badass Brew as I was trying to do, and I just thought, oh man, I think I'm get it. I was gonna shout out Ioyas, but then I think they were dogging ordnance. Either way, awesome. Don't hate.
Yeah.
Don't hate.
If you AO, you ain't shit is what it reads. And that's funny. My husband was an AO in the Navy. So.
Yes.
I think that's kind of funny.
I'm so sorry. What was your question? I'm so sorry.
So it was like you were having fun, and then it was all of a sudden shit got real. And did that kind of bond people together, or was it just like, you know, I hope I'm not going, like, you know, fingers crossed it's not me.
Yeah, I could talk about this all day. I can remember we were going to bed and it was nighttime over there. And I remember my buddy, who I'm still good friends with to this day, he called me. He came and knocked on my barracks and said, come over, you got to see what's on the TV. And so we all came in. Next thing you know, we're all piled into one room watching the towers come down. And we all just couldn't believe it and sat there in silence. And I can remember when it hit the Pentagon is the first time I remember feeling like fear set in. I can remember thinking, oh, wow, like they are hurting us legitimately. Yeah. And that was the first time I can remember feeling the fear kind of come in. But it was very, I guess, clever on the part of how it was positioned, you know, in the media, because I can remember within a minute of them showing the footage, they just showed a video of people overseas celebrating. So it was a bunch of people in Pakistan celebrating. And I can remember all of us instantaneously going from a feeling of fear to a feeling of like pure anger, of
Wow.
like everything just switched. We went from being scared that our home country is being hurt to where now it was singled out. These are the people who did it, and they're celebrating Americans dying. And it was like hatred came in. We wanted to go kill all of them. And that became even just a journey of me of, you know, of becoming a Christian and walking that path of understanding, you know, my fights are no longer physical but spiritual, and understanding Islam and Muslims and how they were raised. And there's a whole complexity there that I didn't understand as a 19-year-old. You just see someone celebrating, and all you want to do for years is just go kill them. And it was something I'd never experienced. But I can remember within 3 hours after that, we were formed up outside, and we were waiting to find out. Some people in the unit had family in New York, so it was just this awkward time of trying to figure out what's going on over there. So 3 hours later, we were formed up outside, and I don't even remember what happened after that. I remember 3 days later was my 21st birthday, and I was on a plane to Guam. And Guam was, a lot of people don't know, but that was a big staging point for the war. And by the time we arrived, the entire runway was filled with C-5s, C-17s. There was every single spot on the entire runway was taken by aircraft. And we weren't allowed to leave the base for 3 weeks. So for 3 weeks, we just were locked down. And then after that, it became a lot of ordnance builds, and then trying to get out in town. I just turned 21, so I was also trying to get out in town as quick as possible and, you know, see Guam and partied up. So it was just a weird time. You know, we're going to war, but I want to party, and that sums up the military perfectly. Like war and partying as much as you possibly can.
Yep. Yeah, and partying is a great distraction, a great way to pass time. Yeah, I relate to that. But you can't do that forever, right?
No.
And how after your like second half of serving, you know, doing those deployments and that, when was it like, this is enough, or it's time for me to get out? When did you have that moment?
Good question. I don't know if I've ever processed it or thought about the timeline in that way, but I guess right around the time I ended up in my last duty station in Miramar in San Diego was the time I just stopped drinking. I just started hanging out with my buddies and going out. And that was the time where I always just had this empty feeling inside me. So when I was overseas, I tried sleeping around. I tried drinking. I was partying all the time. I did everything that I thought I wanted to do. And I just had this huge hole inside of me, and nothing filled it. Nothing. And I tried everything. And that was even in high school, going back further. And it wasn't until I accepted Jesus and became a Christian that I really felt like it was a perfectly sized piece came into me where I felt complete and I felt whole and I felt peace. And then I went full force into, I guess you could say, Christianity. And I guess I became the Ned Flanders in the Marine Corps. You know, I was, because at the time I was really conflicted. If I look back at that time, my last year, I was such a hypocrite. I remember sleeping around and then kind of calling out my friends for their lifestyle and calling them but really I was just projecting everything that I felt about myself onto them. But it caused them to kind of hate me. You know, these are my friends, but I'm calling them out on crap, and they're looking at me thinking, you're doing the same thing with us on the weekends, and then calling us out. And I was so confused. And right around that time in San Diego, I got invited to a great church. It had only been around about 3 months. And I came and had my world just rocked. I dove in full force and met amazing people. Like, I ended up with better friends that I had in the Marine Corps, which I didn't think was possible. And because I love the Marine Corps, but if you really want to be honest, what the Marine Corps is like, or the military, it's the same thing as having a sibling. You love them. You would do anything for them. You would die for them, but you also kind of hate them. You don't want anyone talking crap on your family, because you're a family. Hey, if you're in the family, you can talk smack. But if you're not, you know, there'll be a fight over it. And that's what it's like being in the Marine Corps, the military. It's a love-hate. So it just was such a confusing time. And then I ended up with better friends than I had in the military, and that just started me on a journey of healing a lot of stuff that I didn't know I had, a lot of trauma, a lot of junk. And not to steer down a different road, but that's where I became better friend than me. Louder is on here. Rick Louder is a true friend to the ages. I won't tell the stories of what Rick and I did in Guam, but if you ever needed a good time in Guam, Louder, who's on there, is the man to go. Although I was always intimidated by that guy who's on there, is because he is so mechanically minded and knows how to fix everything. And I ended up in so many positions where I'm not mechanically minded, and I had to completely pretend like I was, which is even 1,000 times harder. So sorry about 3 different tangents there. I'm getting distracted.
No, you're good.
So,
yeah, no.
Go ahead.
All right, so that's what I'm here for, to help guide this. And I kind of wanted to go back to talking about, so you got invited to this church, and that was kind of like your come to Jesus moment, like legitly. And it kind of, it changed you. And I think that's awesome, because we all need that. And it's always right after you hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's where you've had enough, and you need something to keep you going. And that's kind of where I was getting at when you were doing that. Was that also like, I can't continue, my service? Or
Oh yeah. When I got towards the
that
end
affect
of,
your decision?
Oh, gotcha. When I got towards the end of my enlistment, I can remember feeling like I had maxed out, where I was trying to pretend that I was something that I wasn't. I remember being given this CDI, which is a qualification to ensure that the builds are done correctly. And I remember feeling so out of place, because so many guys around me were so good at what they were doing. And I had, and so many times I didn't understand what we were talking about. And so I was just pretending like I understood and trying to fill this role, and it was incredibly difficult. So around that time, I remember getting towards the end of my enlistment, I thought about staying in. I also feel like I had maxed. I couldn't, if I continued trying to do this, I would get outed, or I would humiliate myself in some manner that'd be hurtful. So I can remember, it sounded crazy, but at that time I got in, this is embarrassing. At the time in San Diego, I got invited to some open house, and it was an open house. It turned out to be a giant pyramid scheme, opening invitation into join some company selling stuff. And I thought, this is amazing. Me and all my friends are going to be stupid rich. We're going to be wealthy. That's it. I'm going to get out. And I remember my transition out of the Marine Corps was this guy, well, he's nameless, but people probably remember him. He went around just teaching people how to get out. But all they would really teach is how to collect unemployment in multiple states so that you could survive. It wasn't any kind of preparation. There's no transition, not even contemplating. I don't even think the military was even prepared. Like PTSD wasn't a thing. Like, and even though I wasn't in combat, you got guys transitioning out, which led into Killing Chaos, which is a whole other thing. But I can remember thinking, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell this juice and this stuff, and we're going to make it. And, the head guy ended up in prison for fraud. And then I thought, okay, maybe this is not the best decision to follow this.
Right.
And so
I feel like so many of us have that story, because they just prey on people in the military community that want that extra income, that will, we're easy to sell a story to, or a dream to.
Oh yeah. And it was a video too. I remember it was like a video that must have been 20 years old, but I still was hooked. I thought, this is incredible. And of course had to, get out, and trying to transition out, and, I couldn't build bombs in the civilian world and get paid for it. And I remember just getting a sales job and waiting tables and trying to transition and trying to figure it out. And it was awful. For about 7 years after I got out, it was a really difficult time of understanding who I am. Like, who is Matt Stack? What am I good at? What am I not good at? And one lesson I'd say I did have in the Marine Corps, which helped a ton, was I was given the opportunity to lead in a position in, boot camp and school. And I remember when we got to school, I tell this story a lot, but I was the leader in my platoon in boot camp, and I hated leadership. I hated it because I just thought leadership is nothing more than just being punished for what other people do. And I don't want to do that anymore. So I can remember getting to field training in North Carolina in the middle of winter. And I thought, well, this is going to be 17 days of just pure hell, sucking it up and not liking anything. I'm going to pretend. And I was very blessed to come out of boot camp with a high rank. And so I remember getting to the field training, and I outranked everyone going through it. But I remember not telling anybody because I didn't want anyone to know, because then they would make me do it. And I remember hiding amongst the ranks. And I don't know, for whatever reason, we were in the middle of the field. They made us leave the field and come and pick up our dry cleaning. And I don't know why. To this day, I have no idea why. And maybe my timeline's off in my memory, but we went and picked up our dry cleaning. And there was this humongous rack of khaki shirts where we were all picking up our uniforms. And there you could see all of the chevrons right there of the PFCs. And then there was one shirt that had a set of cross rifles underneath it, which designated the Lance Corporal, the E3, which was mine. And I can remember it stood out like a sore thumb. And I remember the instructors lost their freaking minds. There were a bunch of sergeants. They were like, who the F is the Lance Corporal in here? And of course I came forward, and they just chewed me out in front of everyone. I can't believe you let these PFCs boss you around. And I can remember thinking, whatever, I'm just going to take the ass chewing, just go for it. But I realized how warped my idea of leadership was at that time. And I can remember when I got to my schoolhouse, back in the same boat again, but now kind of have to lead because it can't hide it. And I remember there were two other guys that were phenomenal leaders. Like, one guy was just jacked out of his mind, and whatever he said, people just did it. Then there was another guy who was so commanding with his voice, and the three of us were the leaders of the three different teams. I can't remember what we designated ourselves, classes. And I remember trying to kind of be like them. I remember everyone in my class just looking at me thinking, what are you doing? And that was the time where I remember thinking, I'm trying to be something I'm not. So I started just becoming me and speaking how I speak and talking to them how I wanted to talk. And it was like people responded to that. And that was my first understanding of leadership of, man, one, you can't ask your people to ever do anything you're not willing to do yourself. And then two, if you try to pretend to be something you're not, they'll know it because they can smell authenticity. And it was a huge wake-up call for me. And then it wasn't until church where I realized that leadership is serving. If you want to be a true leader, then you have to commit to serving your people. And if you can commit to serving your people, they'll follow you, and they'll follow you into failure. And that's saying something. And so huge lessons I learned. I don't even remember what your original question was. I'm so sorry. I went down like 10 different stories. But that was a big learning curve for me.
No, that was great. I love where that went. Especially because the way leadership, I think that's such an important thing, that when we get out of the military, we have a skewed view of leadership and we're almost afraid of it. I know I definitely still am. And I think that kind of, made me realize why I'm hesitant to take leadership roles, even in my civilian job. And it's because I've just had such bad experience with leadership. And I think, kind of going off topic, but even in, our whole country, we kind of have like, where's leadership? We don't reward that. Like I think we could. But anyhow, time is already flying by. So I wanted to get to
talking so much.
I wanted to talk more about your book and also kind of get into more, why do veterans self-sabotage after service, and kind of what was your experience with that?
Yeah, thank you for this. I'll try to summarize it quickly, but when I got out of the Marine Corps and I tried to transition in those 7 years, I was looking around and I felt like something was wrong. I felt like everybody was better at me at everything, and I was really insecure about it. Better at jobs, better at money, better at relationships, better. And I couldn't catch up. I couldn't figure it out, and I couldn't sit still, and I couldn't be at home. I'd always had to go out and do something. And it wasn't until about 7 years later, I ended up in a job with another Marine as a coworker. And he was just this big, crude Viking of a dude. And, on Bagel Fridays, everyone would try to get there before him because he would steal all as much as he would eat so much. But I love this dude. He was just one of the most loyal guys. And we were talking one day, and he said that he was about to leave his fiance. He had a great girl he was engaged to. And he was going to leave her to get back with his ex, his crazy ex, because he said the sex was great and he wanted to get back and blah, blah, blah. And I remember getting so angry. And I just started like cussing him out and yelling at him, telling him that he was brainwashed and everything. And when I told him, I kind of didn't understand at the time, but I told him, you don't understand that the Marine Corps brainwashed you like this and that you keep ruining your life to try to get back to what you had in the military. And he kind of sat back. And I didn't realize later that I was also projecting again how I felt about myself onto him. Why I was so angry is because that's what I would do. I would sabotage. I would want to get back with crazy people because, and I didn't understand it. And then all of a sudden it hit me. And then I felt God started to open up that door of what this was like. And I was able to phrase it slightly better, where I realized that the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the military as a whole teach us from the very beginning to love chaos or to be accustomed to chaos. So from the moment we enter boot camp, basic training, they bring in this element of chaos 24/7. They don't want a routine to develop because it can bring in complacency. And they know if they can introduce chaos on a constant basis and associate tasks with those, that they can get a person to follow orders under duress, under pressure, and then when we go to war, that we can still get the job done and get the mission accomplished. Totally understandable. We have to have that. But because there is no transition and de-escalation, and whether you're in combat or not, it's 10 times worse if you're in combat. It's unbelievable. But for people who live that on a constant basis in the military, what happens is when they get out, they will immediately start to self-sabotage their lives subconsciously. So they get into a normal job. Suddenly they're going, oh, these civilians are fake. I just miss the brotherhood. Do you? Because it's going to be more than that. And then suddenly they can't sit still in a room. Suddenly they get into a normal, intimate relationship with someone, and then something tells them something's wrong. Like,
or it's uncomfortable.
We're taught to think if things are too peaceful, but get ready because something's going to go wrong and you need to be ready. And so what happens is guys and girls will get out and ruin their lives, and they won't realize that it's connected to their service because so many of them think, this is just how I'm wired. This is just how I am. No, it's not. That's not how you're wired. That's not how you are. You've been so addicted to a life of chaos that when you get out, you ruin it. You ruin your lives. And so I met this old master sergeant at a conference. And so one by one, I started telling this to veterans for about, I want to say a little over 2 years. I'd meet a vet. I'd tell them my testimony about the chaos. And I would just, almost all of them their faces would change and their mouths would open and they would look at me like I had just read their mail. And I met an old master sergeant one time and I said it to him and his wife. And his wife immediately started bawling. And she said, he's been self-sabotaging for 25 years. And she never made the connection, and no one made the connection. And I realized no one knows this. Like some people understand, oh yeah, the chaos and the thing, but just the transition of addiction to the chaos in the military and getting out and what happens. And so I thought I was just enough to tell guys and girls about the trigger, like, hey, there's this trigger, just be ready. And then that old master sergeant said something to me. He said, what you said to me was a revelation, but it's not enough. He said, what do I do now? And it hit me. And I thought, you're right. What do you do now? And that's where I can remember going, okay, God, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And I didn't want to write a book. I wanted to go home and play PlayStation when my kids go to bed, or play Nintendo and hang out with my wife and watch movies. But I was like, okay, I'll write this book. And so that was the design of Killing Chaos. So a little shameless plug. So I wrote Killing Chaos essentially because every military member has the same journey, the journey of boot camp, basic, to your field training, to some type of school where you're going to learn your MOS and your job, to then being in the field and your duty station, eventually ending up in different billets and then discharge. We all have that same journey. So what I did is I mimicked the journey that we all take and put it into the realm of Christianity, of what your Christian walk should be like. Because for me, my entire source of where I'm coming from is, to me, mental health doesn't start in the mind. Mental health begins at the soul. Because men and women, as I started writing this book, it opened up a lot of doors, and it became an approved resource for the Reboot course, helping vets overcome combat trauma. And one by one, I started breaking, my heart started breaking for vets. And if I'll be honest, I used to hate veterans. And be like, oh man, you guys just never shut up. You just talk about your service. You can't figure out this life. Why do you always do this? And then once again, projecting all my stuff onto them. And then as I started going down this journey of helping vets, man, I can't tell you, my heart just breaks, because you can see guys just going along and ruining things and not making the connection. So as I started going down this journey, not to open up in a huge other topic here, but an important one, I always thought that I was helping vets overcome their trauma from the military, be it non-combat or combat related. And it wasn't until I started leading one of the courses to help vets overcome this trauma that I realized so many veterans can trace the trauma back to their childhood. And their childhood, because they grew up in a terrible home or an abusive home or neglecting home, that actually is a catalyst of why they joined the military in the first place.
Yeah.
And so they, yes. Oh, please intervene anytime. I'm gonna, otherwise I'll just talk.
Oh, I was just gonna point out, I think I was talking about this maybe last chat or chat before, and just like how recruiters, they know where the low income areas are. They know where
go there.
The broken families, or the first generation Americans, they know where they can get more numbers.
Yeah. I don't know why I never even made that connection too. You're right. That's 100% true. They know, because that's going to be the type that thrives in that environment. And so, but what happens is you get men and women who come along, they have all this trauma, they have deal with it here, and then they go into the military. Then I kind of attribute it to getting a plane up to 30,000 feet and then just letting people walk out the door with their DD-214. Good luck. Figure it out on the way down. And no one does. No one figures it out. And so what happens is then not only will men and women, I'm learning as I go down this journey, is sabotage their lives, but they seek out employment that has a similar lifestyle. So why do so many military members become cops? Like, because it's a chaotic environment, because you get to be in an authoritative position, you get to carry a gun, you get to fight the bad guys. I wanted to do it. Why do you become a fireman? Why do so many end up in the kitchens as chefs? I told this to my buddy recently, and his face dropped. And he's been a chef for like 15 years. And he said, do you know, I just had a meeting with my boss last week, and he told me, hey, you love to shoot from the hip and be in this, I guess you could say, chaos. You can't do that anymore. And so it's really opened up my eyes of what we need to do for veterans. And so it's become, I guess I can say, my life's mission. Not enough is being done. And and if anything, I would blame the leadership that's in place right now, of whatever level that's at, of what that transition looks like, because it sucks. There is no transition. Good luck. Have fun out there.
Yeah, and it's we could blame whatever. I'm sure that there's so many factors that kind of play into it. But I'm curious, and you probably go into this in your book, how do you learn to overcome that chaos? How do you learn to sit in the peace, or be okay with being comfortable in a healthy environment?
Yeah. I don't know how to do it outside of Jesus. I really don't. And so for me, that's my answer to it all, because in the Bible, Jesus said he is the Prince of Peace. And so to me, I couldn't bring peace into situations. I couldn't bring love into situations, because it would always be an external thing that I was trying to implement in somewhere when there was an internal struggle that I was having. So there's a whole world that I could have, but as we go down the soul route and the spiritual route, what a lot of people don't realize is the demonic route that ends up in there as well, is because let's say I was abused as a child. There's serious trauma there, but there's also a spiritual tie there that's tied to me. And there has to be an authority that comes in who's able to take authority over that situation. I was telling someone one time about this, a buddy of mine who was also a Marine, who became a cop in San Diego. We got to dinner and we're sitting at dinner, and he was trying to understand what I meant by authority, what I mean by the name of Jesus, and understand. He didn't understand. And I said, it's easy. We were in a restaurant, and I said, let's say I stood up in this restaurant right now, and I said, everybody, put down your forks. I'd like you all to step off from the booth and step outside. Everybody would look at me like I was crazy. And then the management, the current authority of that place, would actually come up and ask me to leave. So that's what would happen. But imagine if I was in a police uniform and I held up a badge and I said, everyone, I represent the department, San Diego, police department. I need all of you to put down your forks and knives, get up and leave immediately. Everyone would be able to see the uniform and recognize the authority that it carries. So it is in the world, so it is in the spiritual realm. There's one authority and one name that everything must bow to. So that's where I started understanding the spiritual war that takes place. So there's a whole world I could go down. One humongous element is breaking those generational ties, breaking that trauma. But the biggest one, like let's say I wasn't talking about Jesus, which I always do, of course. And so I'm like I said, but what I would say the number one thing is people need to understand forgiveness and what forgiveness actually is. So most people think forgiveness is allowing someone off the hook for what they did. So let's say a family member abused you sexually as a child or something horrible. Most people think if I forgive that person, I'm now saying what they did was okay, but it's not what forgiveness is. And a lot of people think if I forgive this person, I must now allow them back into my life. That's also not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is simply making a decision that says, I'm no longer allowing what that person did or who they are affect me emotionally. I'm letting it go. Now, should there be justice? Absolutely. There should 100% be justice, and they should go to jail and everything that goes with it. But in understanding from a person, C.S. Lewis has a great quote. He said, unforgiveness, so not forgiving, unforgiveness is like drinking poison, hoping the other person dies. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison, hoping the other person dies. And I realized as I go down this journey, forgiveness is probably the first route of understanding forgiveness for what people have done to me and letting them go. Then forgiving myself, being able to forgive myself for things, because that's what people hold on to. Lots of vets have made terrible decisions overseas in the moment. And I've walked them through it and watched them break down. And being able to let themselves be okay and forgive themselves for it is one of the most powerful things ever. And then as we accept Jesus into their life, they're able to feel the real peace for the first time and understand who they are and their identity. And so that's become a big journey that we're on, is getting vets to understand that, because I don't know how to do it without it. I have a vet, a good friend of mine was an Army Ranger, and we talk a lot about this. And he went through a program, and he read my book right before he went on it. And he said, oh man, I don't even need to do this program anymore. I read your book and now I feel like I've got this amazing level. And he ended up going through these treatment plans, and he was the medicine, the drugs they had him on, had him screaming in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., trying to process what he had seen, what he had done. And the doctor's like, oh, that's normal. That's normal. To me, it's not. I understand the route they're coming from, of when neurons and the firing, and, if trying to reroute and, reposition. But to me, there's only one name. There's only one way to go about it. And so that's the Ned Flanders route. That's the way I go. Sorry, deep stuff, but that's where I get.
Yeah. No, I love getting deep, and I appreciate you sharing your faith and also kind of breaking it down and explaining it for those who may not be familiar with that. I think you did a great job with that. And we're already at the 9:40, so I wanna make sure you get your final words, and also where can people find the book and find you?
Yeah, good question. I would say actually, I'll probably give a quick little shout out. So yeah, so I've got Killing Chaos is my book. If you typed in Killing Chaos Matt Stack on Amazon, it would be there. And then if you're a vet and you're like, dude, I don't have money or anything, just message me. I'll send you one. I'm not really weird about it. A couple other books that if people want to dive in is I just started on this one called Supernatural Freedom from the Captivity of Trauma. Great book that someone gave me. This one is called Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You. Phenomenal book. This covers trauma from two perspectives. One would be an A trauma and a B trauma. So A trauma would be like A for absent. So I had a father who never showed affection, never told me they loved me. There was a neglect, or I didn't really have great medical care as a child, and my teeth were really messed up. And that's another type of trauma that people can have that can really manifest later on. And then a really great book is The Body Keeps the Score. And so that's a powerhouse book. So really great stuff. I'd say for me, what vets need more than anything is to be understood, but to have a great community. And so community is what's missing. When I was in Kuwait, my buddy, it was right around the time I was trying to figure things out. He said, Matt, you keep trying to do this Christian thing on your own, but you got to remember a Christian is like a piece of coal. It can get on fire for God, but it'll only ever burn so hot. You have to put that piece of coal around a bunch of other pieces of coal so they make a fire that nothing can break in and get near. You need fellowship. You need community. And he was right. And when I found a great place where I could feel like I could put my roots down, I had great friends who had great marriages, great lives. It was right around the time that I was getting around really solid men, like 20-year Navy SEALs, doctors, men who had amazing success and great but powerhouse prayer warriors, and taught me how to do that. And I realized that's what men and women need, is a community, a good community after they get out. And to me, that's where church comes in. A good church comes in.
Yes. Yeah. That's hard to vet out too. I can imagine. I've heard some stories.
Don't get me started. I'll talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
A whole other box.
Another time, right?
Yeah.
But Matt, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing everything. And everyone, please check out Matt's book, reach out to him, and thank you all for joining the live. It's been a lot of fun seeing everyone come in and out. And if you're re-listening this on the radio, or if you're watching the replay, I hope you enjoyed this, and be sure to give Matt a follow. So, all right, everyone, have a great week, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.
Bye.